Alright, let's make some animal ocarinas. In this case, we're going to use the pinch technique to create a hollow shell from two bowls. We're going to use some sticks to create a working fipple. That's the part that makes the noise. We're going to use relief techniques to transform the appearance of the shell, in this case into some sort of animal. And then we're also, like usual, going to artistically emphasize the surface and contours of our artwork. I'm going to start with a couple lumps of clay about the same size. I'm going to pull them off of this main one, and then I'm going to smooth them out and make them into nice smooth balls and make them into two pinch pots about the same size. If I start with two pieces of clay about the same size, I should not have much difficulty in making two pots that are about the same size. If you watched my video on how to make a pinch pot, you should already know how to do this. I'm putting my thumbs in the center and I'm pinching around the edges, and I showed you in that other video as well that by taking two pinch pots of about the same size you can put them together to form a hollow shell. So I'm smoothing and I'm making sure that this is a good size, and I'm going to work with the other one as well, getting them about 3 to 4 inches across. I'm going to adjust them until the second one is the same size as the first. It doesn't have to be exact, just close enough to put them together. Now you should be able to see from the video that I just about have these the same size. I'm going to flatten off the edges a bit, and then I'm going to score and slip. And to do that, I'm going to use a textured rib. The rib is not necessarily made for scoring, so it doesn't score very deep, so I'm going to go around it a couple times to really rough up the edge. Here's my obligatory lecture on scoring and slipping. Clay structures are always strongest when made from a single piece. Since we're putting two pieces together here, we must score and slip in between them. If you do it properly, you will have a great success rate, 95% or even better if you do it properly. If you do it improperly, your success rate will plummet. If you score and do not slip, things will not stay together. If you slip and do not score, things will not stay together. Only by properly scoring and slipping will you keep it together. Once I've put these together for about a minute, they will stay stuck pretty well because I did score and slip along the inside of each edge. You probably saw me there using the textured rib. I'm going to use that again around the outside, and this is really kind of what it's built for. First I'm using the smooth rib, and then I'm going to use this textured rib around the outside to rough it up. And then I'm going to use a smooth rib again over top of that. This is what the textured rib does best. It gives you a lot of loose clay to smush down and make nice and smooth. Now that I have a nice smooth hollow shell, I'm going to look it over and I'm going to see where the seam was, and I'm going to use a side that is not along the seam for my downside, which I'm going to make flat. You'll see me here pressing it against the wood to make one flat side which is not along the seam if I can help it. And now I'm going to start forming the fipple, which is the part that you blow into. Notice that I have a couple of tools here that are basically popsicle sticks. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to push it through a piece of clay, and this is going to help me build the fipple. The other one has the end chopped off flat, and it's going to be a tool that I'm going to use a little bit later as well. Now I'm going to guesstimate about how thick the wall is on the downside of this that's flat. And I need to take that popsicle stick and I'm going to push it in so that it goes along the flat side on the inside. It must be touching that flat side. I scraped it up on the outside as well, and I'm scraping this up and I'm putting some slip on it because I need to score and slip it together. That popsicle stick that you see is going all the way through the side, and it is flat along the bottom of that flat side on the inside. I'm also going to take a coil here now and I'm going to put it around it so that I make it airtight all the way around. At this point I'm going to take just a moment to apologize because I'm going to make this look pretty easy, and it's not. We always make the fipple first before we do any of the sculpting on it because we want to make sure that it works, and if it doesn't work you might have to start this part over. So I'm going to actually do something I don't do often, and I'm going to slow down the video so you can see the actual time that it takes to make this. I'm cleaning up the end of the fipple to get it nice and flat, and then I'm going to judge how far in on this piece of clay that I need to work. You might see that the stick stays tightly within what is going to basically be the air hole that you blow into. Now I take this other stick, and it is chopped off flat at the end to make it into a tool, and I'm going to use it and I'm going to trace the other one back, which is flat inside that flat side of the ocarina. And I'm going to judge how far in I need to go, because I need to go in just beyond the wall that's above that stick. And I push it in until the two sticks meet, and then I'm going to gently rake it back, and it's going to make sort of a V shape if I were to cut it from the side. But this way you can see that I'm pushing straight down until I find the other stick, and then I'm going to pull it back and keep raking it back so that it's nice and smooth at a very low angle eventually. It can be quite confusing if you're not sure exactly what the shape should be. So here I've drawn a cross section. You can see the long stick that I originally put in the flat side, which in this cross section picture is at the top. And then the flattened stick, which is used as a tool to scrape back, goes straight down and hits the stick that's on the inside and then rakes back to form a long V along that flat side. So you go down and back over and over again. So you push it in, this is down, and then you pull it, and that's back. It's at a slightly different angle than the picture, but you can see that I'm scraping over and over again to make that long V shape on the top. The sharper it is, the better it is, but you need to watch out, because if you separate it from the walls, it can be very difficult to keep it nice and flat inside, and you can lose your pitch in a bisque fire if you do that. When I pull that long stick out, I know that I might have to put it back in. Here I'm just sort of cleaning out a little bit of excess clay inside to make sure that it goes nice and flat down the inside. But I may have to put that long stick back in a couple of times. Just like this, you insert it and make sure that it goes underneath that V shape. Make sure that it is nice and smooth in there, and you can try and reform it, because it may take a while for it to be just the right shape, just the right way to make the air flow correctly. This also might be a good time to inform you that yes, you're going to have to blow into this. So if you have a problem with touching clay to your lips, you may have to come up with some other method to blow air through it. But there's nothing better than using your own lungs to blow. Don't inhale, just exhale. The first couple of times you do this, it may not come out exactly. I'm going to clean it up and try it a few times. Quite often you get just an airy sound coming out of it. When it sounds a little bit hollow, you're getting close. And eventually, if you do it right, you may end up with a sound like this. Now that I have it making a sound, that's the lowest note in my register. I'm going to make some higher notes by using a straw to cut holes in the side. The larger the hole, the more it changes the sound. By putting your finger over the hole, then it will take the sound back down. The more holes, the more notes. Make sure the holes are clear. By making different size holes, you can make different steps between the notes. If you make a hole and the sound goes away, cover it up. That hole was probably too big, or you've made too many notes for the size of your ocarina. When you clean up your work, make sure that you keep the V shape as close to the original shape as you can. Don't push it around. Be very delicate with it. You can put it on a downside later, but I usually end up testing it over and over again as I go along. By making more holes again, you can make more notes. Overall, it's the size of the holes that matter to change the pitch by different degrees. Where they are placed on the ocarina is not very important, just that they're a place where air can escape. I try not to place them too closely together so that they can be fingered easily. Now that I have the musical part of this working, I'm going to once again speed up the video a bit to take you through the sculptural steps a little quicker. At this point, the musical part of the ocarina is working, but it may not stay that way if I put too much pressure on the outside and I'm not gentle with it. So I'm going to make sure that I make some slabs and some pieces that I'm going to put textures on and attach them nice, not roughly, but I'm going to be delicate and gentle when I do it. Sometimes I'll even leave the piece out for an hour or so to let the clay harden just a bit. If you leave it overnight with some moisture in the bag, this often works as well. Letting the fipple harden a little bit and the whole apparatus on the bottom can keep it from warping when you put a little bit of pressure on the outside. keep in mind if you let the clay get too hard, it will be unworkable and you won't be able to do anything with it. Throughout the sculpting process, I do periodically check to make sure that the fipple is still working, and if it isn't, I try to work on it enough to make sure that it's working up to my standards. If it does get too dry, however, remember it could all just break apart, so be gentle if you do this. I began by putting little three-toed bird feet on the front of it with some texture on the top, and now I'm using circular fondant cutters in order to make eyes. Some of them I'm actually cutting out, and some of them I'm just indenting into the surface. The smallest of my circular cutters is, of course, the straw that I use to make the holes in the bottom, and then I can use other tools to make different sorts of lines to make eye designs. Then I'm going to score and slip and score and slip. Did I mention score and slip the eyes into place? Now, many like to use a sponge to clean things up and smooth things out, and I like that over a larger, wider, flat surface. But when I'm doing little detail work, I like to use a brush. You'll see that. And I'm going to put the different pieces on here, and I'm going to brush things in place. And I'm even going to brush the slip into the score marks. I'm going to also use a plastic texture sheet to put sort of a feathery texture onto the wings. I use the first wing that I cut out, and I use it as a template by turning it upside down on the clay with the same texture, and then I'm going to score them and slip them into place. Once I have all of those pieces together, I'm going to look at it and decide that to make it look more like an owl, I want to give it sort of a horned ridge on top. So the next thing I'm going to do is make those little horns. To do that, I'm just going to use a coil. So here I am, rubbing a coil between my hands, and I'm going to get it moist first. Need a little bit of moisture in there, and then I'm going to cut it to size, and I'm going to put it on the top of the head, sort of like a U. It just gives me a little bit more clay to work with up there. Then I score it, and I slip it into place. Once I've put it in place, I'm going to use the back side of a finishing tool, just the rounded edge, and I'm going to make it look sort of feathery or hairy by drawing little hash marks through that coil and into the surface, continuing it from one piece of clay into the other and blending it down layer by layer to make it look very feathery on top, give it a nice feather texture. You can see that I also tested the ocarina. I'm almost done sculpting, but I'm going to put some lettering in using some alphabet pasta. Here I have a quote from Shakespeare, and you can look it up if you want to. It's going to say, "To wit, to woo, a merry note." It never hurts to put in some witty little references to other things in your work. It makes people think that you're thinking. So if you find references like this in my work and you wonder, did he mean to say that? Yes, I did. This pasta, of course, will burn out in the kiln, leaving a letter-shaped indentation behind that can be glazed. So let's check our finishing criteria. It's a minimum of 3 inches in height, width, and depth. It's about 3.5 inches actually, and uses many different textures. I'll use a couple of different colors at the end as well. It does make a whistle sound. I checked that very many times. I've used additive and subtractive relief to create different shapes and different textures, and I made it look like a little owlet or a baby owl. I also put holes in it to create different notes. I used a dark stain underneath a translucent light brown glaze. This is what it looks like when it's finished.